So hi everyone, my name is Yannick Abraham. I'm from Client and Drakia, and I have Dominic Brunel from Drakia with me. We're very happy to see you coming from the break. I hope you had a good time. I wish you all an incredible 2021, and we'll make sure that the product and Client and Drakia is there to support you in 2021. Today, the topic of our webinar is project management. So it's our client keynote. So today we're going to give you a demo of the project management functionality. Like I said before, I'm joined with Dominic Brunel, which is our growth director at Drakia. So if you need any help with implementation, don't hesitate to reach out to Dominic, db@drakia.com. So today it's our keynote, and next week we're going to have our customer showcase again on project management. So if any one of you want to join us, we still have one place left on the panel. So don't hesitate to reach out. I might be reaching out to some of you to showcase some of the project management functionality that you guys are doing on your system. The week after, on the 27th, we're going to jump into execution. So delivering those projects that we've been selling and planning for the last few weeks. Okay, so before we jump into the demo, I wanted to give you an update on the release. It's been a little while that we haven't released a new package, but there's one now that is it's ready. It's the 39.2. We have a new component, a new project board that's been released. We've done a lot of improvement on the survey as well. Really interesting stuff, and in collaboration with one of you guys, so one of our customer, we've improved the PDF on the invoice. Next week, so if you want to skip the 39.2 and just install the 39.3, next Thursday, January 21st, we're going to have a new mobile timesheet. I know a lot of you are waiting for that. Logging time on mobile was kind of tricky in the past, so we have a new component coming, and there's also an enhancement on that project board that we released on 39.2. You're on one of the most reliable platform with Client and Salesforce, but we're always improving security. And as we've started in 39.2, but we're continuing in 39.3, so we're rebranding everything from Crow to Client. The company name has also changed to Client Inc. The release, we're planning to do a release every 4 weeks. So we're gonna continue adding stuff. You don't need to update, and you only need, when you're ready to update, you will only need to update once, and you're gonna get all the latest functionality we've deployed for the past weeks. But every 4 weeks, we're hoping to give you a new release. And soon, we're gonna also expose the roadmap. I've been talking to some of you about the functionality, but we're gonna also have in our community, we're gonna have that roadmap exposed. So because for the first time, we have the release note and the new documentation are on our client community. I just want to show you where to get to it. We're improving, and we're going to start another project of improvement of our community. For now, the way to access it, it's either via the search, or we have a button here. This is going to be replaced, but for now, we have a button here on the home page to link to the release note. Oops, give me a sec. This was not planned. It's not the version I wanted to show you, but I'm going to still go ahead. So jumping the release note. So this is based on Salesforce, right? So we're using knowledge or an article. We still have Zendesk for the remaining of the documentation, but for now we have that way of presenting the information. So the release note just tell you everything that's been updated. So as you can see in the 39.2, we have the project board, survey enhancement, so you can look at all the details of what has been changed. We also specifying bug fixes and known issue, and at the bottom here you have the installation URL, and we are linking to new help articles. So this is new. This is in a few weeks or months, it's going to replace the Zendesk. So for example, if I click on the project board link, and I come into another article which has all the information about that new functionality. The way that we've configured our article for now is that we have the prerequisite, how to configure, and how to use. As you will see, we have a ton of screenshots and procedures. So Ilan and the rest of the team have been working very hard to build comprehensive documentation. So let us know what you think. And at the bottom as well, you can always comments on the documentation, and you can also vote for some of it. As you can see from the URL here, we have crow.forest.com. It's not done yet, but we're going to change it to client. So Ilan is going to send you an email at when this is going to be done. So we're not going to be able to redirect you. So at some point, if you're not able to log on the community, it's just because the URL has changed, but you will know by email. So this is it for the release note and where we're going. And now let's jump into the main topic of this presentation, which is project management. So in terms of project management, the question that you should ask yourself, and people coming into client are asking themselves, is are you structured? Do you have a repeatable way of delivering your project? Are you able to forecast and see and have clarity in terms of your resource assignment? So those are the kind of questions we're gonna talk about and we're going to look into. Most specifically today, in terms of the functionality, we're going to look at planning and scheduling a lot. So I think this is one of the part that maybe is a bit a more advanced topic. So we usually don't start with this when we do implementation. It takes a little bit of knowledge and experience with client to be able to do proper planning and scheduling, but it's also a complex topic. So today we want to clarify some of it. And in terms of the roadmap for that project management, so soon we're going to add some preset and filter on the gantt, and we have delivered on 39.2, and we're going to improve with 39.3, the agile project board. The benefits, I like that sentence: freedom within a framework, to have structure and repeatability, to drive quality and predictability. So this is really what client can offer, and it's the core, right? Client is a PSA, so it's a project management tool. So the idea is that you have all the tools in your hand to be able to have a business that can really repeat its success. So Dominic, maybe just I'm gonna. You can share your screen, but just before you take that into account, maybe to locate ourselves. I'm sorry, my English is bad from the return of the holiday. I've been speaking way too much French. So in the last 2 weeks prior to the break, we've been talking about business development. So we were with the proposal, we were selling a deal, we were planning and scheduling and forecasting for those deals. Now that we've sold it, we're going to jump and we're going to go into the planning aspect of it. So the agenda is that we're going to look at planning with baseline and critical path. We're going to talk about project assignment, the planner, compare resource and book, and we're going to go into details into what's the difference between plan and schedule. So this is the most complex topic, I would think, of client. We're going to try to make it simple for you today. So this being said, Dominic, maybe you want to start talking about this slide, or do you want to take control right away?
We'll take control. I think we'll circle back and keep that one for cream on top.
Oh, yeah,
on this
true.
one. It's a challenge. That topic is a good one. It's a good challenge. So that'll be nice to see how we do with it. So yeah, so let's jump right into it. Today, say hi. I haven't said hi yet, but happy to be here again with you guys. Always, it's a good challenge and exciting demos because we get lots of comments from you guys after these demos, and it stirs interesting conversations. So happy to do that still this week. So basically, I'll jump right in. In this case, I am acting. It's going to keep it easy for roles, operation manager, whatever. I'm receiving a project that we've won, and we need to schedule it and put it on track and launch it. So really, I'm now in the project that we've done. If you recall, just before the break, we've built some proposals. We built some opportunities that we were scoping and using templates to build and have some prices sent to the customer. So I'm launching from all of those projects. I got advice that we got that job. We won the opportunity. So now we just need to deliver. So let's get on with it. So I'm on that project. Now it's flipped. It was in pipeline. It's now flipped to in planning. So I know it's there's a few things I need to do, other than looking in high level as the information on the project. So I might have just double checking a few things, making sure all the rates or the expected revenue and a few things are there. There's that information I can look into. But as a PM or something that wants to launch that project, the first step I'm gonna take is to just make sure that we are we are right in time, we have our Gantt chart, we have our schedule that is set correctly. So and before I staff, I want to make sure that everything's scheduled right. So my first step will be to go to the project Gantt. So launching from the project's page itself, I have a button that is set on the upper right corner, so I can launch directly the Gantt. We've showed also last week or in the art of the possible that there are also components that we can have directly on the page for quick consulting. In this case, I like to have that wide view, that big view, so that's why I open that button and I look at my project as a whole. So I have my project that was as out of the sales cycle. One of the things that I might want to do, and we're maybe not doing enough, is to generate the baseline. So I inherited the project. Maybe I want to take a snapshot of what it looked like when I received it, just so that later down the line, with the modifications that we might have, change requests, and whatever happens in life, where the project might change shape, change length, duration. So what we want is maybe take a snapshot at this point. And when we click here on the upper right corner, what it does is it's going to give me a description field and that I can make sense out of. So in this case, I'm going to call it as sales to ops. So basically, this is how I got the project. So we have an idea of how it was sold, at least initially. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set that one as baseline. As we'll see later, we'll be able to compare our actual project or the way it's going to be as we live through the project to certain stages where we will have created some baselines there. So I'm going to set that one to baseline. And the background, what it's doing is it's making kind of a site structure of the project with high level information on the project and all the tasks that are at this point on the project with the dates, the estimations, the duration, obviously, and some information all even on actuals, so that if number of hours logged and a few things. So we're able to see a progression of a project in time as we're using baselines, and we can have more than one baseline, obviously, set to a same project. We have that as a related list on the project, but we only have one at a time that is obviously set as baseline because we can use that in the Gantt chart.
So as a project manager, when the sales guy is telling me this is not what I sold, then you can always come back and tell him, no, look at the baseline. This is exactly what you gave me before I started, right?
Yeah, so it's a good habit of creating baseline. Obviously, there's a few things we could build on top as an implementation process where you could say, okay, as we flip, we automatically create a baseline. So these are automations we can eventually think about them, but really it's quite an easy to build one. I would also do that later down the line in the process when I, let's say at a point the customer is telling me, oh yeah, I can't deliver this, or we need to postpone or to do a change request. I'll probably do a baseline before we have that change replicated into the Gantt chart so that we can, see the evolution of that project. So now that this is done, next thing I would look is, is that actually, it was a pipeline project. So it gave us a good idea of when we were expecting this project, what was to be done on this project, but maybe it's not exactly as, when it's supposed to be starting. And as we see here, we have that set so that it starts. My signature, I know that, as it comes from a template, this is a project that I use quite often. It's a structure that we repeat. So I know that, what drives my project start is my signature here. So this is now set for January 1st. Obviously, we're 2 weeks later. We'll want to replicate that and have that showing in the Gantt chart here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change that start date and put it for, let's say, next Monday. I'm officially starting that. So I'm going to change that date and make it official so that my Gantt chart is updated at this point. This is a structure where we have kind of a nice waterfall structure of project where we have all the dependencies, the leads, the lags. So it's really all together as somewhat of a interconnected block of tasks. Obviously, you might have something that is either we have less tasks or more that are not necessarily all interconnected. But what we need to do at this point is to make sure that we have something that is time bound and makes sense with the reality, or at least the reality we're planning to have at this point. So now we have that updated. And as we'll see, as we'll be talking about task schedules and task assignment schedule and all those topics, this is, we want to have as much as that project plan set before we start assigning, because when we take decisions on who we want to assign to a project, obviously we need to have the right dates on when those tasks and when those efforts for each resource needs to be completed. And now the other thing also, now that we have, and I can demo maybe a bit the critical path, it's we've created the baseline, we've set one. So if I was to click here on the view critical path, I was explaining something. So yeah, another thing, the critical path that I want to touch base on doesn't have anything to do with the baseline. I'm mixing two subjects. So here we have a toggle here that says view critical path. Just to explain here, this case, as we have again a waterfall with dependencies, this is lighting up the most the path of tasks that are linked together that will influence the end date of my project. So it's taking from the first date all the way to the latest date of the project, anything that is linked together, that if I change the length of a task or the position of a task in time, or change the leads or lags, or I delay a task with regards to another one, I'm going to have an impact on the delivery of that project. So it's either customers asking, can we crunch this? Can we make it faster and include more resource, or try to replan so that we have it faster? Then having that critical path kind of informs you, if I want to have an effect on my lead time, this is what I need to work on. And if I affect any of those tasks, then I'm going to affect my my delivery time in this case. So that's the use of a critical path, which is interesting for some projects when you have those dependencies built into your project plan. The other
Just
thing,
yeah,
yep,
let's go quickly on baseline, so we have more time to cover the
yep.
rest of the.
The other thing is that we have that baseline just refresh in the background. We had that baseline that was created. So if I click here on my toggle, I now can see what it was before and what it is now, since I've changed my start date. So this is the effect of that set as baseline, so that we show that on the Gantt chart. So that's the toggle right here.
Awesome.
Excellent. So next, we have that set. We're ready to start kind of booking back our assigning and staffing our project. So what I'm going to do is going to go back to my project itself. And just before we start doing this, I would just want to go into put myself into getting a bit more information to place everything into concept. So we'll see here, we have a resource plan directly on the project itself. We'll call it the project resource plan. We have certain level of information there, but we also have another one that is accessible through the app launcher, which is called Resource Planner. So this one is, we'll call it the Global Resource Planner. So we have the whole set of information for all projects that we have access to as an operation manager. We can see everything here on that page. So just what I want to do now is I'm preparing to staff my actual project, that deep dive project we were at, but maybe I have some other projects in the pipeline that I need to consider, because might have an engagement lead specific that I want to reserve for some projects that are, will maybe shortly close, and I want to consider that also when I take my decision to staff my project. So right here we have that global. It provides, as I said, a lot of information. We can, for now, we have my view that I come onto is it is shown by resource. I could decide to show it by project. So this is the toggle. So you see that parent was now all the resource, and now it's showing the different projects that I have in my system. So that's another way of looking into all those projects that we have. We're showing this now by week, depending on the length or the standard length of projects. Maybe you want to look into that in month. Maybe months is too much. We have 12 months. We can have here on the upper right corner, we have a length or number of columns that we're showing. So that's also something that we can look at, and reducing the number of columns.
Can you just switch back to resource, Dominic? I think
Sorry.
it talks a bit more when we're talking, showing the resource planner. Yeah.
So we can change the number of weeks we're looking or month that we're looking. So we have those on the upper left corner, those time scale that we can use, and the number of columns we're showing. Uh, Quickly here, interesting, if you need to jump back in time or forward, you can decide to pick a different date, and then it's going to show you, the starting from that range. So that's a quick button that is quite interesting. And we have today, which is going to bring you back to actual date as far as the first column. Thing we need to also understand, and then we'll go into more details later, but we have now what we're looking into is planned hours also. We have a drop down that can show us the scheduled, the planned, thus the discussion we have later between the difference between those two. We have availability also that can be displayed, and utilization. Availability being a different version of the plan, but just showing you what's remaining from a work week, what time is still available, and utilization being hindsight. Whenever you have time that is logged, you can have log time also on those on this view, so that I can review what was planned and what was scheduled versus what was actually logged. So that's another interesting way to use this tool.
And now we're looking at hours, right?
Yes.
So, but sometime because it's hours, sometime in the month, and depending on the schedules and the availability of your resource, one of the view I like, it's really to switch it in percentages. So,
So yes, exactly. Yeah, right here, that's the toggle we have here. It's either number of hours or percentage. So it's this information that we look into differently. So now we see occupation, or what number of hours that are planned. The percentage we see is based on target utilization for each of the resources. So you may have different work weeks, as Anik said, and different target utilizations. So this is showing how close we are to achieving our target utilization here. So, and this is where we use that summary color code. Where we can display the red, the green, the yellow based on some criteria that we may have as far as how we want them to be utilized, and to make sure that we flag over scheduling or under scheduling of resources. If I was to flip, quickly there, I'm going to close on this. If I was to flip on projects, and what I want to see is, do I have anything in the pipeline? So I click too fast here on the upper left corner. We have a series of filters that we can use. And in this case, what I want to look at my pipeline projects. So I only want to look at those projects that are flagged as that status. I could flag with different things, with accounts, teams for the resource. I want to see only resource on certain teams, and the rest at the bottom here also is stuff that would be looking into wider teams. When you have a bigger staff there, if you want to just see certain sections, certain practices, certain locations, these are fields that you can kind of filter out or filter in just certain values there. So in this case, I want to look into pipelines. I'm going to apply maybe a few projects there I want to consider before I go in staff, upcoming stuff that might be, close to would be closing soon. So that's a good tool, just to also, something that you circle back to often as a planner, as a scheduler, or even as a PM when you have to decide, who would be working on your project. That's a good overview of the different projects in the system. That brings me back with that.
Maybe just one point, because you went a bit fast on the filter. There's a lot of different options, but the concept of pipeline project, or the statuses, this is kind of key, and it's driving a lot of the forecast, like we were discussing during the sell side or the proposal side. So for now, every time we're trying to sell something, it's not closed yet, our project or mark as pipeline. So that's what allow us to easily see what's up, what's coming, and what is really scheduled or planned. Sorry.
No, thank you. So if I flip back just to show you the difference, we just wanted to show you the global. Now we are back to the project. And I'm going to go into the resource planner, because now I want to staff that project, now that I have a bit more context as far as what's upcoming and what my different resource may have. What I have now here is the project assignments that we see. So we have already some assignments that were set because we went from a template where we had built some different tasks, and we had assigned some of those tasks to placeholders. This is my naming convention that I'm using where we have a P between parentheses to know that it's a placeholder, but you see that the placeholder name is the same as the role. It's something that we use to pre-staff a project with specialties that would be required. And eventually also there's evaluations, and we might see that in a later webinar where we evaluate the capacity. I don't know, we've looked into it maybe, but we can roll up through roles so that you can have a good idea of what's upcoming into your company as far as different roles that we might need. So that's using the placeholder. It has several purposes. So in this case, I'm trying to staff for that engagement lead. So there's one way using this here that I can, and we see the number of hours that are already assigned to that placeholder. This is what I'm going to try and staff to someone else. So one way of doing it, and it's a good tool here we have with the planner, is that if I click on the link itself, so the placeholder name, it brings me to something that looks a bit of what we had prior in the global, but now we're really focused on a certain number of resources, and we're focused on only, if you see that top row here, what we see is the actual values of hours per week that we will need to staff that will be assigned to that new resource here. It brings me a list of pre-filtered because I have a role. So my placeholder for engagement lead has a engagement lead role. So that what I still have that small icon here that shows me a different number of filters, and it's pre-filtered for this role. If I could, for some reason, maybe remove it, have a wider variety of resources, maybe you have some resource that can act as two different roles in projects. For now, it's pre-filtered by the default role that each resource has. So we only have one default. But I could say I could bring in some solution admin maybe, because sometimes those solution admin can be acting as engagement lead. So I could play with the filters of what I'm seeing here on the screen. Again, skills, teams, region, practices, and locations is filters we can. If you have wide teams, maybe you don't want to have 50 resources. Maybe you want to drill down a bit into your people pool. At the bottom also, just going to touch base on this, but it's something interesting also. These two filters would affect the values we see in these different squares here in the matrix of hours available for resource. So that's what's it saying here at the bottom is resource status. So that resource might be on several projects. It might not be booked for all projects. It might be for some reason included into pipeline projects. These are the status of the project assignments. So I could decide not to show anything that is pipeline, maybe nothing that is on hold for some reason, so it's going to affect if I choose or not the hours here. So it's not going to get all the hours. It's going to get only the hours of the ones that are checked. Same for placeholder status. Eventually, if a placeholder is considered on one or other projects, you can filter out some of those values. So it's going to affect the bottom section here of the net value. So just a kind of a teaser there. It's something that is interesting when you have lots of different projects to take a better informed decision on the actual availability of a resource.
Yeah, and I think that book, soft book, art book, this was recurring question that we have from customers. So this is one place that we use that information about a resource request or an assignment, should I say.
Eventually we can circle back on the difference on book, soft book, and all this. There's different impacts at different places. Yep. We can leverage to even get more precise into our scheduling. So you've seen now I've added also my solution admin, so it gives me a wider pool of resource I can pick from this case, but still I'm going to use only I'm looking for an engagement lead. So what I can do is I can select a number of resources, and as you've seen, as I've selected on the left side here, right side is for something else. The left side is to compare. I have that button that appear here, compare resources. So I can click on this, and what it's bringing me to is a comparison chart of the different resource with their skills, their project resource information. So I have the skills, the regions, practice. I have some utilization targets and available hours. So this is something that can help me select which resource would make sense. If I have some skills that are required on this project that I know of, then I even have in this case the proficiency. So, how do we qualify those resources, and how can we better leverage the capacity of those different resources to better provide a better service to our customer. So that's something that we can use to compare. I also have the cost rates of those that are these information here are located on the project's resource again. We might have even vendors in there eventually that could have a different bill rate. So maybe you'll want to use the cheapest one or with the best capacity, or this can factor in your decision. So once I'm done, maybe I've evaluated and able to select which one I want. So I could simply say here book, and what it's going to do is all the hours that are assigned to my placeholder would now be flipped to my newly selected resource. So I now have Bill Bob here that is now selected and will be assigned these hours.
Your dates are wrong, Dominic.
Oh, okay.
There's no
Yeah.
bug in the system.
No, I was wondering. Thank you for. I kind of got frozen. My brain froze there. Yeah, thank you. So now I have Bill Bob Jr. that now has the hours. The other thing also we can drive is that will have an effect eventually, that status we just talked about. Then now if we say, okay, we're good, then we can mark him as booked. So now it's kind of official. It's going to appear on its timesheet, and we can make it official, and we see that now the color changed. So that's the color code is in this case here based on the status of that resource. If I hover over that resource, I see also the name, the role, and also the status. So that's one way of doing it. Okay.
Maybe I know. I know where you're going next, but maybe just before, can we come back to the project itself and just look at the project assignment, since we still have the placeholder?
Yep. So if I look, I'm back at the project here. I have project assignment and eventually task assignment. But if I dig into my project assignments, I see that I still have my project resource and my placeholder that is there.
And this is an object that sometimes is not well understood. So everything is pretty much driven in terms of assignation with project assignment. So before we assigned Bill Bob, we had two placeholder, and within a project assignment, you can see the role, the resource, and then the rates and the costs. And we'll jump later on into other details. But that project assignment, I just wanted to show it to you prior of switching the other guy, because this is an object you can always refer to when you're planning or when you're executing a project.
Yeah, it's going to be helpful for reporting on a few things also. So we can use that. We'll circle back on this one, but there's a few information that are rolling up to the project assignment that is useful to for execution and tracking on projects. Anything you wanted to add on this one, Yannick?
No, you can go back to swapping your resource.
So if I go back to my my project resource planner, the other way that we can, now we went into the process of selecting, comparing, and maybe sometimes it's just straight out of, this is this person. I don't need to go through this whole process. So the other easy way of swapping is just clicking on the pencil instead of, earlier I clicked on the name as an hyperlink, so it brought me to a selection list. But if I was to click on the pencil itself, now it's the actual project assignment that I'm getting into. I have some start date, end date, and what it's comprised of. But I have that upper tab here, which is swap resource. So I could decide to say, I'm going to swap the resource, and I know I'm looking in this case, I know the guy I want to use. Billy Joel is available, not seeing it too much these days. He's doing a lot of remote work, so we'll be able to use him as a solution admin. So we can just straight up switch him and have him on that project. So we don't need to go through that comparison, in some cases if we don't need to. So that's another way of swapping. That's how we would function, and then go one resource per resource, and then swapping like that to actually assign to our real people that will deliver the work. So that kind of brings me back. I'm kind of done with this at this point. So if there's we can see if we can circle back if there's any questions also. We haven't mentioned, but as always, drop your questions and the Q&A, and then if there's any, we can circle back to those topics.
I've inserted a
That
few already, but if I wasn't clear, just let me know. But I believe everybody should be seeing the question.
perfect. So that's what brings us to task, project assignment. We've touched based on this, and also task assignments. And this is where I jump to the slides that we had and try to tackle this mystic subject of the difference between project assignments and task assignments. So what I'm going to do is going to just flip back to the slides if we don't have any further questions on that.
Oh,
And we'll
no.
just try to demystify this. So really we have, a few places we have planned and scheduled, and there's different things we can do with that, which can be very interesting as far as going further with your planning and scheduling using those two levels. Just two use cases that come to mind is that. And before I go to the use cases, the planned hours are linked to the project, so it's really direct children of the projects themselves. And we have the scheduled, which are derived from or linked to the task themselves. So we understand that in this case here, we might be higher level. Not as much detail as when we get into scheduled, because a task can be attached to our Gantt chart, and we get a lot more detail on as far as what we need to achieve on this and when this is going to occur.
Maybe just a bit more color on this. So a lot of you guys are using tasks for your project, but you could also have just project and assignments, and you still can log hours on project and not having tasks. So for a simple project, or for when you're doing resource placement more than maybe a really project with task, then you can just work with projects, and then the plan is going to be really what is driving you. And when you want to go in a bit more detail and be more granular, then you're using task. But also we have a second layer of planning. So maybe the difference, Dominic, for a use case for that would be, for example, you could maybe have something higher level for what you sold, and then go a bit more with task and task schedule for really the operation, so you can then compare. Is that one use case?
Exactly. Yeah. One of the use cases I was going to explain is that, if maybe you have some work authorization or hours budget that you're giving as far as sale, and you'd say, I have 200 hours of an engagement lead that you can work with as a PM on this project, then you can go and assign anything to any task you might want. So you'd get granular, but it kind of serves as indications of total number of hours you might want to. So that, using kind of work authorization or hours budget, that can be further detailed. That could be a use case here, where we have those two levels that we can leverage. They're somewhat separate. One serves as a reference, the other one serves as operations detail. As you said, there's some cases where we don't need to have those task assignment. We'll just solely work with planned. We can still have some schedules, or we can have time-bound hours when we use planned. It's just not linked to a Gantt chart specifically. Another use case I've seen with a few customers, and we used it pretty well as far as for their operations. They were having projects in pipeline, and as we'll see, we have a syncability in between those that we can use or not. But for them, they were into pipeline projects, were considered as planned hours, so they were project assignment schedules, and the operations, they were using the level of the task assignment schedules, which is the scheduled, so that they could have two kind of levels of advancement in the projects. And at some point, we can even compare those two and have some different reportings and forecasting based on these different hours. So just different ways that we can leverage those different levels here on plan or schedule. And it might get clearer as we get into more detail as far as what is comprised or what is impacted by planned and scheduled. So that's why we have here the projects. As we said, project assignment are linked to the project. And as a child record to the project assignment, we have project assignment schedules and we have project assignment utilizations eventually also. Project assignment utilization is another utilization calculation that can be really, it's project specific. We have resource utilization also, which is record, which is resource specific. Now we can have that one, which is resource and project specific utilizations. On the other side, we have tasks. Now we have the task assignment linked to the tasks themselves, and we have the task assignment schedules that are now underneath that. These two, this is what we see when we go in the resource planner. So those colored squares show that flip from blue to green whenever we change the status of that assignment. This is what actually the record we're displaying on the planners. So it's a number of hours with the start date and end date to make it simple. So these are the task assignment and project assignment schedules. So if we go just one step, one other layer, anything that is linked to those or used based on those different records. So as we know, project assignments are obviously project, resource, role, and rate. So they're specific. They are a unique combination of a resource that work on a certain project with a certain role, with a certain rate. So as we've said, I think we might have mentioned that, but we can have the same resource working on the same project, but with different role. So that's something that could also be possible. And when you do your timesheet, then you can decide to punch time on a role or another based on what you've been assigned on that project.
Maybe just okay, before you switch slide, Dominic, I just want to mention something about the deletion and recreation of project assignment. Want me to go ahead right now?
Yeah, go ahead.
So project assignment and task assignment is a great object. You can play with it. You can even add custom field on it if you need to. Just be careful with these schedules, project assignment schedule and task assignment schedule. Those get recreated and deleted and recreated depending on how you play with the system. So those could be, it could be some change or unforeseen changes because we do update those automatically, the system does, while the project assignment will remain unless you really delete it. But just wanted to mention that. I know some of you are using those in reports and even to store additional information as well.
Yeah, good point. So, and we have that we have on the project assignment, we'll just circle back, but we have lots of statistics and actuals and stuff that rolls up to a project assignment. So these two objects are very interesting also to when you're in execution and tracking of a project also. There's reports, and even at the project live, you can have that rolled up at the project assignment. So you know one person, even if they're working on multiple tasks, what was the effort for that resource on that specific project, that rolls up also to the project assignment. On the other side, we have that, on the schedule, on the task assignment, we also have that unique combination of task resource. We can have that role and rate also that would be specific to a task assignment. As we know, we have on the task, we have a role that can be defined, and we can have a task rate also that is defined. So we can even go more detail as far as this specific task should be performed, or at least when we invoice the customer, it should be shown as being performed by such a role and at such a rate. So you could have a specific rate on a specific task also for some reason. Let's say you have an operations that we've sold to the customer as something that is at a lower rate or a higher rate because it's a bit more complex. You could have just one task also that is set to a certain rate. So lots of flexibility here. Just need to set it and understand it so that it applies to your model. Again, we have rolls up of what is actually scheduled, what we have in the books for that task assignment, and we have the actuals that are linking that are rolling up to that. And the other thing that is where we can play with this is that we are linked. Task assignment is linked to a project assignment. So we have a lookup that is from the task assignment to the project assignment. So we have, everything kind of is intertwined in a sense. But the other aspect that is interesting is that we can have that in sync. So meaning that at some point in time, or as a default, depending on your model, we could have that task assignment schedule that are being copied over as project assignment schedules. So this is where I was talking about that customer that has some projects in the pipeline that are just project plan, and they are only looking into their forecasting as far as project assignment schedules. And when it gets into operation, they flip that there's a switch there. There's a checkbox that I will show you, but there's a checkbox on the project that says, from now on, anything I do in my task assignment schedule, I want that replicated into my project assignment schedule. So you could have project-based behavior that could be considering the stage of your project if that's such a model that you might have. So really, this is where it says it's getting deleted and recreated. There's
Yeah.
different.
I guess I jumped the gun on this. I thought you were changing slide before. I'm sorry.
No, but it's okay. So there's different, the behaviors like that would, because if I was to change my Gantt, if we look into the Gantt, I've attached a task assignment because that's Gantt related. If I was to move my Gantt and stretch it or push it 2 weeks because the project got delayed, all the task assignment that are related to those tasks will update also. So if in this case I was to be in sync, meaning that my task assignment eventually get copied over as soon as they're updated, they would be copied over to project assignment. That would mean that the project assignment schedules that are related to this would get deleted and recreated based on the update you just did on your Gantt chart. So once you understand these concepts, there's a lot we can do with it, and it should, as Yannick said, influence the decisions you might take as reporting and maybe automations. If you build further automations in your system, consider that behavior there because it has an impact, obviously. And last slide, I will just close on showing the objects themselves, but we're pretty much in time here. So really the different tools that, as I mentioned, that are using those fields, those records. I mentioned the planner, so the global one, and the global and the project resource itself. So do that. It's not mentioned like that in the system, but have that two levels of planner that are using that information. Those squares showing either by month, by week. This is the schedules that are showing either the project assignment or task assignment schedules. We have that sync button. I'll jump right on to right after this. And on that schedule, really, as I said, a Gantt chart, or anything that you move into your Gantt chart, if you have some resource assigned at the task level, that would influence the task assignment schedules. They're linked. And anything task components, meaning if you go to my project and you change a date, then it gets recalculated. If you go to the schedule tab into my project and change a number of hours, that's recalculating all those schedules. It's really interconnected, and everything gets updated as we do some modification. That's the goal of that type of system. It's live and everything is linked. You don't need to update several places. So back to the project itself. In my layout here, maybe it might not be on yours depending on the page layout, but if I scroll down here, I have a field which is called sync project and task schedules. So see, now this one is for me checked, meaning that anything I do on the Gantt chart or the task assignment schedules would be reflected. So it's like on that project, if I was to go onto the planner, if ever I switch in between here, planned and schedule, I have the same information on the two sides. Okay. Now the color changes just as the status because I probably played around with this one, but really the hours are the same. If I was to do a change on my Gantt chart, it would be reflected in the plan also. Okay, so these are the task assignment schedule we see here, or in this case, project assignment schedule because I'm into plan. So, and the other thing, as I was saying, maybe I could just, as we might have a minute and close on this, when we talked about the task components that kind of influence. If I was to go into my project, if I was to change this, my schedules would change. If I was to click on my my task itself and assign different number of hours for some reason, the scheduled hours to that resource, then it would recalculate my schedules. So
That's why sometimes you don't want that checkbox to keep it in sync, right? To keep what maybe has been sold versus
yeah.
what has been really on the execution side. So you have two objects that you can compare values or hours. So really depend on the use case.
Exactly, and it's just that it provides a lot of flexibility to be able to map your model as far as how you want to convey that information. What are you using as kind of a process, and also where you're looking for what type of information. There's several ways we can use this behavior or play around with this behavior there to provide more flexibility. It's always a kind of a tricky one to explain and also to understand. So hoping I didn't confuse anyone more than you were already were. So
Could you, yeah, it is a difficult concept to understand, and it does change a lot. So sometimes it's difficult to track. Will you go in the object in
yes,
themselves? Yeah. Okay.
exactly. Thanks. So now I've went into a project assignment. So I see that in my related, in this case here, I have some project assignment schedules. So this is created per week. This is what is used to display, as I said, in the resource planner. So I do have those. Basically, if I was to go into a project assignment schedule, really it's a start date, an end date, and a number of hours per day in this case. So depending what scale we're using, are we using day, week, or month? Then a client works with that information to display it properly. And if I was to come back to my project assignment here, when we say it rolls up, it pretty much rolls up a lot of thing here. We have that plan and number of hours that we assign to someone, but we also have that actuals that would eventually roll up because we have a resource, because we have a role that's going to roll up everything when we put our timesheet on there. So it's I have billable hours, non-billable, and even the amounts using the different bill rates and cost rates that we have for that assignment.
So meaning that that's at the minute that somebody's going to log some time on it, right? So you have one in the.
I have one, yeah, here that we could show what it looks like if I was to go just when I fetched just before that presentation. One that is an older project where we had a lot of hours, in that case that project and that assignment is closed, but we have all that roll-up information of the number of hours that were billed along that project, or at least all along that project assignment on that project. Then that kind of rolls it up. So depending on, you could have more than one also, don't want to necessarily overcomplicate, but in one project you could have a certain period you're working on it and then even have it close and then get reassigned later down the line onto that project. You could have that information also that says, for that period you've worked on this assignment and this is how many hours you worked, and even come back on that project on a different assignment and have those hours rolled up. So there's a lot of analysis that we can do if required using those objects and
We're
pushing
really
their
going in
limit.
detail here to show you the objects, but you don't usually work directly with those objects. Maybe you report on it, but the main, the core of our client customer, they don't use that object as per se. They use it not knowing about it with the Gantt or with the different planner. But it's to understand the concept. I think looking at those assignments, project assignments, and when you're not sure about the bill rate as well for a resource or a cost rate for a specific project, this is where that information is being stored initially. Before
Yeah,
we
that's as when I take ownership of a project, that's what one of my first go to is, talked about the Gantt, but financially, I want to make sure that we have everything that we need here. Just hovering over that project assignment, I've made those list views here show me the right information I want to see, and I do have that bill rate, which is critical to have whenever we start logging time to make sure that the invoicing is going to drive. So this is the project assignment, and this is usually one of the view that I go to just to make sure everything's sane, healthy, and we're good to go and launch it into the jungle so that our people can start logging time on it.
And the same thing, if you can hover on top of task assignment, we don't need to go into the detail, but you still have the same kind of concept of a task assignment. So because Bill Bob has been assigned to a specific task, he has this. And if you open one, Dominic, we're also going to see in the related of a task assignment, we're going to see that we have the same concept of a task assignment schedule. So it's a per week, and then you can see how many hours been assigned on a specific task. Again, usually we don't work directly with those objects, but the concept is still interesting, and you can get a lot of valuable information when you're trying to create reports on profitability or utilization, or see how many hours somebody worked on a specific project without going into much detail. You can just open up the project assignment, or in this case, a task assignment, to see how many hours has been done.
Yeah, any reports, and I think we've showed one in the previous webinar where we had capacity evaluation would be based, or even forecasting per role. We're leveraging those objects as we have that evaluation, and it could be live information as where if you're using the task schedules based on the gantt. As you're moving your gantt, these reports of capacity also get updated because they're leveraging those records there. So as Yannick said, we're not looking into it, but lots of objects like planner, like reports would use that just to reflect where your how your company is doing and what kind of workload you have upcoming.
Awesome. Anything else, Dominic?
I don't know. We covered pretty much everything I wanted to talk about.
So there's a lot of different topic, right? We could have covered in terms of project management. We decided to focus on scheduling and planner and those objects because we know there's a lot of question. Perhaps it's not 100% clear either at this point. We're going to make sure that, yes, we do better documentation about those concepts, but let us know if you have a further question moving forward. I do have a couple of questions coming in. Can you go? Yeah, so maybe a screenshot or on how we've been setting up those page layouts. So unfortunately we can definitely send you a screenshot, but unfortunately we cannot push a page layout update to you guys because you might have changed it and we don't want to override it. So you will need to go ahead and create those page layout. But definitely, Katie, we can send you some screenshot.
Yeah, the webinar is recorded also, so you could also circle back and get the exact screenshot you want to have, just looking back at that webinar also. That's another solution.
Good point, Katie. I'm gonna also maybe update the or ask Michael to update the community with some of those screenshots. Okay, and the other one is Nicole asking a different question about how to use it. So you have a couple of options. So either if it's something really simple, you can always reach out to support and we can help you out. If you want us to maybe train some of your people, so what I would recommend is to write directly to Dominic, db@drakea.com. But we can also circle back with you and Nicole to make sure that we answer all your questions. Okay, we have 3 minutes left. Anybody else has some question? Or I'm hoping that this was useful and you understand a bit better how the tool is being configured. I'm gonna give a few seconds. Otherwise, Dominic, it's been a pleasure. Next week, same topic, project management, but we're gonna look again. It's a customer showcase, so we're gonna have a few of our customer showing you how they use it. Usually those are interesting because it's real life example and it's definitely aligned with the type of business that you guys are running. So we're looking forward to see you next week. And if there's any other question, don't hesitate to reach out either through the community or by email. Thank you, Dominic.
Thanks, that was a pleasure. Thank you, Nick.